Hey, unruly subjects, it's Chinjirai, and I need your help to keep the show going strong. If you love what we do here, consider supporting us by joining our Patreon community. It's the best way to back the show, and you get some incredible benefits in return. Membership starts at just $5 a month. I mean, there's nothing that cheap, at least in New York. And you immediately get ad-free episodes and exclusive premium episodes. That includes interview outtakes and other extras you ain't gonna hear anywhere else. But that's not all. You can access the Unruly chat and polls. When we have a live event, you're gonna get the pre-sale tickets and the merch. Oh my God, the merch. You know the merch is gonna be fly. And you receive invitations to our Q&A live streams and, my favorite, our annual exclusive hangout with me, the producers, and a special guest. So yo, come on people, join the Unruly mob. Visit patreon.com/unrulysubjects. And thank you for making this show possible. Row Home Productions.
So, did you say this in some of your podcast? Hey, this is Unruly Subjects. Yes.
I do say that. I say, what's up, y'all? Unruly Subjects is in the building. Do you want to say that this time?
I'll try.
Okay.
What's up, y'all? Unruly Subjects in building. I can't say it right.
You got it right. You said it right.
But I can't say it like in a. It's just because we're outside and I feel like people are around us.
You feel a little funny saying it?
Yeah. But at home, when mommy is listening and it's just mommy and you guys.
You're going to do it again there?
Yeah, I could say it that way.
Okay, all right.
It's just like, what if people say, yo, be quiet?
Then I'll tell them be quiet. You know what I mean? You be quiet. We're Unruly Subjects and we're in the building.
What up, y'all? Unruly Subjects is in the building. Yeah. I was trying to get Yola to do that maybe, but you never know. She might have to take over the reins at some point. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, yeah, y'all. Yo. Good to be here with y'all this week. There's a lot going on as usual. Thanks to everybody who's been sharing the show. You know what I'm saying? We got more and more people coming on board. And by the way, first and foremost, big shout out to the Patreon supporters. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. We are adding things there, building community over there. And we want you to join that community because, this show is independent and for free. And, if y'all really want us to continue with the incredible episodes that we're putting out and we got some heat coming up, then it's really important for you to support us that way. And you will get some exclusive content like activists, whether it's nurses or clergy or, faculty who are kind of on the front lines of struggle. Sometimes I put those interviews over there as well as some fun stuff just to kind of allow us to breathe a little bit. So yeah, big shout out and appreciate the Patreon support. And if you haven't supported yet, if you're listening to this show, then I think you should come over there and subscribe. There's lots of tiers and levels that you can subscribe at, including a free level if you just want to be in community with us. So we appreciate that. I want to start out with a quick note on last week's episode. Because, we've been hearing a lot, especially online, on social media from folks about our conversation on Steph Curry, the NBA, Israeli tech, and celebrity capital, sports washing. So if you haven't heard that one yet, I guarantee you want to go check it out. And, we're still learning more on that beat, right? I mean, look, as somebody who's not into sports, I'm like, oh, wow, the relationship between professional sports, money, empire, and Israel in particular is really, it's deeper than a lot of people think. So check that episode out, and we're going to probably bring you more on that topic. I also wanted to give you a couple of updates because there's some real movement around things we've talked about on this show. So first of all, an update on the data center episode. If you haven't heard our episode, How to Kill a Data Center, you definitely want to check that out. It's one of our most popular episodes. And listen, there's a real victory that's worth noting. In Monterey Park, California, the company that was tied to the proposed data center project withdrew its application. This was after our episode came out. After sustained community opposition, residents had been raising concerns about things like electricity use, water use, noise, environmental harms, things you're seeing all over the country, and the broader impact of opening the door to more of that. And so the city moved towards a moratorium, but then organizers kept the pressure on, and now the company actually withdrew its application. So it's a real example of people organizing and winning. And that matters because, what we are often told in this situation is that these projects are inevitable. AI is inevitable. Data centers are inevitable. It's just the future, and we have no choice except to just absorb it. But that's not true, right? In fact, on the data center fight in particular, communities around the country are increasingly pushing back at like a huge scale. And those concerns are real, right? And so now the research on this stuff is kind of catching up to what organizers have been saying. This is not a marginal issue. It's central. And there's one more victory I want to talk about. Some of y'all might remember that a little while back, we had folks from Contract Faculty United here at NYU on unruly subjects talking about their contract fight. These are like contingent adjunct faculty who don't have, like a real solid contract or didn't, but they voted to strike. They went out and on strike, you know what I'm saying? They were, I went out there and walked the line, and they now have their first contract. It's a big win, not just the details of the contract, which are precedent setting across the country, but also, just the solidarity between different types of workers in higher ed, the students and community members who all came out to support this. And so it's really, really important. And I want us to just like sit with that, because right now institutions are counting on us feeling isolated, exhausted. They want us to feel replaceable and afraid. And so it matters to mark these moments when workers move together, when we escalate and withstand that pressure. And God knows the university administration brought some pressure. But that kind of solidarity matters, not just for our campus, but for people watching all over the country. So I wanted to start our episode there with a couple of wins. Just for us to feel that and stay energized and stay in this fight because, it all keeps going. Now, with that said, I want to turn to this week's main topic. This episode is coming out during Black Maternal Health Week, which runs from April 11th through the 17th. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Black Maternal Health Week. Real important, man. You know what I'm saying? Shit, it was a black mother brought me into the world. You know what I'm saying? And my daughter. Black Maternal Health Week was founded and is led by the Black Mamas Matter Alliance, and they describe it as a week of awareness, activism, and community building that centers the voices, perspective, and lived experiences of Black mamas and birthing people. They make clear that it's more than just specific kinds of health outcomes. It's also about getting to the root causes, right? Which includes systemic racism, lifting up community-based solutions in care, policy, research, and culture. Obviously, our overall struggle for health care. So when you look at the issues that are named directly in Black Maternal Health Week materials, one of the issues is Black maternal mental health. And that's part of why I wanted to do this episode. The first conversation you're going to hear today is with my wife, Saadiqa. You know what I'm saying? My wife is an ecotherapist, and she specializes in perinatal and postpartum maternal mental health. And in this conversation, we talk about the mental health dimensions of Black maternal health, right? The emotional and psychological pressures that mothers carry and the limits of how care is imagined, right? What it might mean to think more holistically about care and support throughout their whole process, right? It's not just the physical stuff, it's also the mental stuff. And you're going to hear a lot about that in this episode. And then later in the episode, you're going to hear a conversation with a new mother whose name is Malajah and her doula, Shantice Edwards, who's, both incredible folks. But that conversation is going to get us closer to, somebody who's living through it right now in the trenches of early motherhood, who really remembers very vividly what it was like and what her experience of, giving birth was. And also, the part where, you've given birth and now a whole nother part of the journey opens with the postpartum period. So yeah, this episode is trying to hold a lot of things together. We're definitely talking about Black maternal mental health and emotional health, but we're also talking about, the experience of what it's actually like for someone, who's in it. And the whole time we're trying to think about the larger structures, right? Because in the end of the day, We have to be addressing this stuff at the systems level. And you're going to get some great resources that you can follow up and support folks who are doing this work right now. So after the break, my conversation with my brilliant, insightful, caring, and gorgeous wife, Saadiqa. Unruly Subjects is supported by listeners just like you. Join us at patreon.com/unrulysubjects. All right. Unruly Subjects. Yes. Man, got something special we've been cooking up for y'all this week. So, this week is Black Maternal Health Week. And that week is a week where we focus on a lot of important issues related to serious disparities that Black mothers and birthing people face, especially around physical health, medical racism, reproductive rights, mortality. But there's another side to this that gets less attention. That's Black maternal mental health, the emotional, relational, and identity shifts that can come with pregnancy, birth, and the postpartum period. And, I was thinking about, what we wanted to do on Unruly Subjects related to this. And I realized, oh, wait, there is somebody very close to me who has been thinking really deeply about exactly this topic. And that is my wife, Saadiqa Kumanyika. I just got to say, my wife is a psychotherapist and, we're kind of like a team. My role is to stress people out by bringing you all the terrible things happening in the world. and then my wife provides therapy to, we're like a full service operation. But no, in all seriousness, my wife, Saadiqa, is a psychotherapist whose work is increasingly focused on helping mothers and people who are birthing prepare emotionally and relationally for parenthood. And so, first of all, welcome.
Welcome. What's up? Thank you. Thank you for having me. I finally made it to the show.
That's right. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? We're happy to have you here. Why don't we just start off by having you tell our listeners a little bit more about what you do and how your work is increasingly focused on mothers in the transition to parenthood.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I'm a psychotherapist. I specialize in perinatal mental health and ecotherapy, also known as nature-based therapy. My work focuses on helping people struggling with challenges like depression, anxiety, grief and loss, life transitions, relationship challenges. I'm also a licensed clinical social worker, and so my experience in that world also informs how I approach this work. And, over the past 3 years, I started working closely with pregnant and postpartum parents more in a clinical setting. And again and again, I began hearing some similar themes. Things like postpartum rage topics around that started to come up in sessions, and feelings of deep overwhelm and resentments or conflicts with partners, birthing parents sharing that, how they start to feel a profound sense of identity shift, and the realization that the support people expected often wasn't really there in ways that they needed. And that repetition, hearing it again and again made it clear to me that these weren't really isolated experiences. Instead, it reflected more of a broader gap in how people are prepared for parenthood emotionally, relationally, and psychologically. So my work increasingly has shifted toward trying to address that gap in a more intentional and preventative way.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Of course, because your work is confidential, we don't get into the weeds, but it makes sense that you would see those patterns and then kind of start to shift. So, what first made you realize that maternal mental health, and especially the emotional side of the postpartum period, was something that needs more attention?
So a lot of clients, in some of my sessions, I would hear things like, I had a client say something like, no one ever told me that I would be in the trenches like this, or, I didn't know it would feel like this, or that I would be grieving my old self so much. right?
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, babe, but who out there, listeners, relates to that? You know what I mean? That feeling of like, man, I didn't know I would be in the trenches. I don't know. I just felt that so hard when you said it.
It really resonated when this person, said that. And I was like, I relate to that,
Yeah.
It's real. Parenting is really challenging. But a lot of my clients weren't really saying this because they were careless or unprepared in some simple ways. They were saying it because no one really had prepared them for the emotional and relational and identity transitions of parenthood. I kept hearing about postpartum rage that felt scary and shocking, and like I just keep snapping at my partner, and I end up feeling really bad about it. I don't know why this is happening, but it's just, I'm snapping a lot. And, I thought that I would be excited to go back to work. And, since my leave ended, I find that I'm not even interested in going back to work. So a lot of those things were coming up, right? And it made me realize that there was a major emotional and psychological gap in how people are supported.
Yeah, no, that's, all of that I feel because, of course, you and I have been on a parenting journey together. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm happy to say that, you have never snapped at me. I just want everybody to know that, you know what I mean? Never even once, even in the thick of it, has my wife ever snapped at me or said anything, even a little bit mean, because that's just the nature of our love, you know what I'm saying? But, okay, you're seeing these things, right, as you're essentially like treating people in the mental health work. But at what point did you start thinking not just about treatment, sort of after the fact, but prevention?
Yeah, I mean, after hearing these stories over and over, I started asking, what if some of this could be preventative? What can I do? What can I do to help build community? What can I do to just create space for people to start talking about these issues? Because a lot of birthing parents feel really isolated and like, oh, something's wrong with me. And, and it really breaks my heart when I hear my clients say things like that. So, I started thinking, what if people could slow down before pregnancy or early in the journey and talk honestly about what changes biologically, emotionally, relationally, and socially, right? What if people had tools before they were sleep deprived? Because that sleep deprivation is real. I was like a zombie the first month or so.
All the parents right there who are, if you're in the struggle, when I see people and they're like in that the first year, some people, figure it out early, but I'm like, I just felt like, I was like, I'm never going to think again. And that's me. I had the very easy part. You had, oh man. So,
yes, it's a lot.
Yeah, yeah. But you're saying like so getting people to think about those changes in advance.
Yeah, and to give them the tools to kind of help to work through some of the relational challenges, communication, emotion regulation. And so that's what led to the curriculum I created.
Okay. And that's Grounded Beginnings?
Yes, okay. Grounded Beginnings.
Yeah. So just letting y'all know, by the way, if you know people who are early in that stage or considering having a child, my wife has a great, course that actually prepares you in ways that I wish we were prepared because, what I remember happening was everybody has advice for you. I mean, people got tons of like opinions and advice. Like you should do this, often conflicting, right? Which can be a little overwhelming for you, even though I think people mean it in a supportive way. And then when you're in it, of course, everybody's offering different things to you, right? But this is like a, real structured approach to actually plan for this. And like I said, I wish we would have had it and I could see how that would be so helpful.
Yeah, when I think back to, our experience, our early postpartum experience, like the first couple of weeks after our daughter was born, I wasn't able to produce enough breast milk for our daughter. And it took me a while to for that reality to sink in, actually. I think I was just in a state of denial or just felt, shame and felt really sad and depressed about that. And oftentimes, I remember just going to my perinatal visits and just seeing signs in the hospital where, breast is best. There's a lot of promotion, breast milk is good. But nobody really talked about the other side, the other side of that. Like, what if you just can't produce enough? Or what if, you really struggle with it or have other physical problems that might prevent you from doing it. So I felt really guilty and felt really alone in that struggle for a little bit. And, I'm glad, I had you there and that, to kind of support me through that, because I was not.
Right. But also there was like those classes on, there was classes.
Yeah, there was the classes.
And there was like women's groups that were like,
my doctor recommended that I meet with the lactation consultant, and the lactation consultant recommended joining this lactation support group, which was like just really changed everything for me. Kind of helped to lift my mood and to be around other birthing parents who shared a similar experience, who were also, struggling a little bit when they came to nursing and stuff like that. And to have that community was really helpful. But, this is one of those things that could contribute to postpartum depression, right? If you don't have that support, that community there to say, hey, it's okay. There are other options. There's nothing wrong with nursing, et cetera.
I really appreciate you sharing that. I mean, this is, it's personal stuff, but I know there's people out there that relate to it, because some people really struggle when it comes to breastfeeding. And, I want to go a little deeper on the mental health part of this, right? When a lot of people hear the word Black maternal health, I'm sure folks think first about physical health, mortality, medical neglect, those very real disparities, which are very real. We have the research now. But what do you want people to understand about mental health specifically when it comes to these issues?
I want people to understand that maternal mental health is a major part of maternal health overall. Mm-hmm. This work is about reducing preventable suffering and building support really before the stress peaks, right? And what I started building is an intervention designed to reduce some of that postpartum distress by increasing emotional, relational, and practical preparedness. So this, the group Grounded Beginnings, it's a preventative mental health offering that supports healthier transitions into parenthood, and it may reduce the downstream need for acute care.
Now, why does this conversation take on a particular urgency when we're talking about Black mothers and Black birthing people?
Well, Black women and birthing people, it's kind of out there now, but I think it's important to talk about this. They're disproportionately impacted by the maternal health crisis in the U.S. So according to Black Mamas Matter, Black birthing people face higher rates of maternal mortality, premature birth, low birth weight babies, and maternal morbidities. Mm-hmm. Those disparities persist across income, education, and geography, which shows the impact of structural racism on Black maternal health. So when we talk about mental health, we're not talking about something separate from those structures. We're also talking about the emotional, nervous system and relational impact of living under those conditions.
Right. So all those structural factors are actually just kind of like intensifying some of these issues of like perinatal mental health that would affect any birthing person.
Exactly. So, I can't imagine what Black and brown person. I know I was nervous when during my pregnancy, just knowing the fact that Black mothers in the U.S. are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from maternity-related complications compared to white mothers. So I'm like, can I trust my doctor?
Yeah, no, I think it was real. And I think, we did wind up having a strong medical team in the hospital. But we also had a doula.
That's right.
And, she really did prepare us to advocate. She was like, this is kind of how the hospital tends to look at it, how they might move you through the process. And I think psychologically it was helpful to have that.
Definitely. I tell all my clients, get a doula. If you can, if you can afford it, get a doula, get a postpartum doula.
Absolutely. So
get all the support you can.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. So we know a lot of people get pregnant and it wasn't necessarily planned, right? Like they're trying to deal with it from that point forward. But for people who are deciding like if they're going to have a child or whether or when to have a child, or for people who are really early on in that journey, what are some of the core questions they want to ask around, mental health?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, right? One, am I emotionally prepared to parent a baby, right? And that's an important one to think about because if you're somebody who struggles with anxiety and depression, research shows that you're at a greater risk of developing postpartum anxiety and depression. Another question to think about is, am I financially prepared for a baby?
Right. I mean, I'm sure very few people probably feel
like
financially prepared, but there's some.
But it could be helpful going in, knowing some of the numbers, right? Childcare cost is very expensive, in some states like New York or DC, you should expect to pay around like $15,000 a year for childcare. And that's just one of the factors.
Right, until that changes with our communist revolution in New York. And
Yes, done.
But no, absolutely right. Am I financially prepared? You want to think through those numbers, beforehand as much as possible, and at least prepare for it. What else?
And can my relationship with my partner handle a baby, right? Because one of the things that I like to emphasize is the fact that, whatever struggles you may have now, relationship issues, all those things get amplified during the pregnancy and postpartum period. So if there's some things, communication issues, trust, I would encourage the couple to work it out, to work on those things beforehand.
Right. And anything else?
And if, someone's parenting solo, they might want to ask, do I have a support system in place? Right? Because it definitely does take a village. It takes a village to raise a child. Actually, there's a book that has a whole list of these questions by Jennifer Jessica. She wrote a book called 10 Questions to Ask Before I Get Pregnant. Okay,
cool. We'll post a link to that in the show notes. Why is it important to ask those questions as early as possible?
Well, the transition to parenthood can be incredibly destabilizing if people haven't had a chance to think about some of the emotional, relational, and practical realities ahead of time. If you think about it, think about how we were postpartum, right? Just exhausted, very little sleep. You're operating, you're like a robot,
Right.
So when you're exhausted and, for the birthing parent, they go through a lot of hormonal shifts. So they might experience mood changes and, crying. And there's just so many things happening all at once. It's just not the best time to think about and have some of these deeper conversations. You just really won't have the capacity to do it at the time.
So you kind of want to, you don't want, when you have a crisis around one of these things, that's the first time you're thinking about it.
That's right. You don't want to be thinking about it in crisis mode. Exactly.
No, that makes sense. All right. So your curriculum invites people to kind of start to think through these things and walks them through. But let's talk about the actual structure of your group. The first module is actually about clarifying people's motivations and even helping them understand their identity. Are you really trying to get people to think through in that module?
Well, in that module, we explore common motivations for starting a family. For a lot of people, that can come from maybe there's some external pressure, right? And it's a cultural thing for some people. There's an expectation to have a family, or one partner might feel pressure from the other, from their partner to have a baby. And sometimes it's around legacy. I want to be able to pass some of the family traditions and values, et cetera, to my offspring. So there's a lot of different reasons why people might want to have a baby. And it's important to explore those things.
Right. And what else?
Yeah, in the first module, we also examine grief related to identity and freedom. So we talk about identity continuity versus rupture. When you transition to parenthood, there's some things that you might, as I mentioned before, some people talk about just grieving their old self, grieving like the freedom that they might have had before, just being able to get up and go, and that changes once the baby comes in the picture. Pre-baby, if you wanted to go to the supermarket, you could just get your keys and jump in the car and go, or just walk down the street with the baby. That might take you 10, 15 minutes to get the baby ready, the baby bag, get the car seat ready, all the things, right?
Yeah, I didn't get that. When people would have, it's like, you don't get it, I think, really until you're in it. I would have friends who had kids, and I would be like inviting them to do stuff like the same day. Like, yo, I'm gonna be in town later. You want to, you know? And they would be like, Shane, that's not reality at all. And I sort of got it. I was like, oh yeah, I get you out of plan. I'm like, well, you know, people are like, bro, you can just bring the kids with you, or not understanding what it really means. But then when you become somebody who can't do anything, who are you? You know, it's a different sense of who you are, right? So
yeah, it really does
sense.
change who you are. But, I'd like to give people space to think about, their current identity. What are those parts of themselves that they value, that are important to them? And what parts of themselves do they want to make sure they're able to kind of carry over into this new transition? What parts of themselves do they feel like, they're okay with letting go? And
I just want to say, I think it's great to have a space to think through that. Especially to hear what other people, like in a group, that seems actually good to see other people's versions of it, especially because, look, everybody I think wants to sort of pull themselves up to the challenge of parenthood. Mm-hmm. So that desire to kind of just be a good parent and kind of tough it out might not leave enough space psychologically for us to say, yeah, there's a loss here of a former self, a former way of thinking about myself. And maybe even in some of the enjoyment of things I used to be able to do, they're going to have to get put on hold. Like, where's the psychological space to process that? It's just like, nope, gotta, especially, and I would say this is obviously is disproportionately probably on Black mothers, right? Because, just as gendered, there's even more expectations like, yeah, you're supposed to be, that's all supposed to come built in. All that labor, all that, and the attitude shift is just supposed to be natural, right?
Yeah.
So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it could be really disorienting. So,
and I know partially for that reason, maybe some people who have a sense of that are ambivalent. And how do you deal with that ambivalence? How do you invite the group to think about that ambivalence when people are feeling that?
I try to normalize the ambivalence. It's okay not to know. It's okay to feel, some of the grief. It's okay to experience a mixture of emotions, right? There's no right or wrong way to experience all of this. Because parenthood is a major life transition and mixed feelings are normal, right? So it's really important for me to emphasize that in my work. And people can deeply want a child and still have grief, fear, or uncertainty about what they may lose or how their identity may shift. So I want to I want to encourage them to make room for ambivalence, because it helps people build self-awareness and readiness rather than shame.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes so much sense. I'm like, why haven't we made more of a culture of people talking through these things, as a group beforehand? I mean, I guess people get socialization in the space of their families if they've seen kids growing up, if you got like siblings. But even that, I don't know if that's definitely not enough, to try to deal with this. So that's really good. All right, now let's move into the second module of the Grounded Beginnings. So this one is about emotional readiness, right? And nervous system literacy. What does that mean?
So this module really helps people understand how major life transitions impact the nervous system. We identify personal stress patterns. So early warning signs of overwhelm. What happens to your body when you're stressed? What do you notice, right? And how do you respond to that stress? So yeah, we identify personal stress patterns, early warning signs of overwhelm, and foundational regulation skills that can support resilience before parenthood begins.
What do you mean by regulation skills?
Skills to help to calm the body when folks feel overwhelmed or stressed. So I introduce the clients or participants to like breathing techniques that they can use and different grounding techniques that they can use to help them to be more present and mindful. And so those are some of the things. There's, a number of different skills.
Yeah, I guess those sort of grounding skills are probably useful across a lot of different mental health, challenges people might face, and definitely in parenthood. By the way, I know this is kind of focusing on maternal health, but I mean, I know when I would be stressed, sometimes I would like put my daughter in the backseat of the car, go take a ride and listen to some, listen to some hip hop. Does that count? Does that count as a grounding process?
Yeah, that counts, That counts. If that helps you,
Yeah,
and then I'm sure it helped the baby too.
Yeah,
just sitting in the car.
I'm sure my listeners appreciate me taking this point about Black maternal health and making it about me.
But the big point here is, pregnancy and postpartum don't create emotions out of nowhere. They amplify what's already there. So it's really important to do. So a lot of it is doing that internal work. So I create space for people to do that, to start to build awareness of how they respond in stressful moments, so that, they'll have the tools to manage it when needed.
Yeah. So one thing that's really been interesting to me that I've learned a lot since you've been, moving into this part of your work is how many of these changes are physiological, right? Like they're grounded in physiology. So, pregnancy for physiological reasons makes the emotions go kind of wild. And then after birth, there's also like a big shift in the nervous system wiring. Could you unpack that a little bit?
Sure. So, a lot is happening during pregnancy and postpartum, right, on a hormonal level. So during pregnancy, estrogen and progesterone rise to levels higher than almost any other point in life. And these hormones influence serotonin, dopamine, and GABA, the neurotransmitters responsible for mood stability, motivation, and calm. So your emotional system is already being dialed up. Then after birth, estrogen and progesterone drop dramatically within 24 to 48 hours. And it's one of the steepest hormonal drops the body experiences. So I often describe it like this. During pregnancy, the emotional volume knob gets turned all the way up. Then after birth, the wiring shifts abruptly. And I can go on and on. That's not all. Oxytocin surges, and this supports bonding, but it also intensifies emotions. Prolactin increases, and that supports lactation, but it can also contribute to fatigue. Cortisol fluctuates, and that can impact the stress response in the body. And the nervous system is biologically primed to be more reactive. So this is physiology. It's not weakness, right? So when a mom might be experiencing mood changes, there's a lot that the body's adjusting to,
Right. I remember, I just want to bring you back, if you can go back to what it felt like for you to be, going through these changes. When you were going through that, do you feel like I was sufficiently supportive of those kind of changes? Did you feel like I understood that? Or, do you feel like I supported you on those fronts enough during that period? Keep it real.
I mean,
all right, you're taking too long. Never mind. Let's keep moving. No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. No. I want to, no. Yeah, no.
No, I think you supported me in the best way that you could, right, at the time. I wouldn't even have known what to ask for, because I didn't even know that my body was going through all these changes. So I was just tired. And when I was tired, you would step up and like try to watch the baby so I could sleep. We came up with like a sleep schedule. When I was in this like kind of delusional state and just couldn't accept the fact that I wasn't producing enough milk for the baby and we needed formula because she just wasn't getting enough food, you went and just took it upon yourself to go to the grocery store and bought formula so we could feed our baby. So you kind of stepped in where you could, and you try to give me the space to rest. And
that's very kind and generous, but I got to say, hearing everything that you just laid out in terms of the actual changes going on and how some of these are like hormonal changes that you're just not going to experience unless you're going through pregnancy. Like, I feel like I could have probably shown up better or differently, because
you probably could. No, let me stop.
Of course I could have, folks. You know what I mean? Come on. There's no question about that. All right. But I got to say, all the focus I feel like I got in terms of prep stuff we got from the hospital, and the doula was doing a good job, but it was mostly all about the baby. It wasn't about you as much.
That's right.
I think that's important. Now, you also talk about how becoming a parent activates the attachment system. What does that mean in real life? And what does it look like in terms of mental health?
Yeah, this is a thing that comes up a lot. Becoming a parent activates your attachment system, and that means your early childhood experiences, right? Unresolved trauma and the internal blueprint of caregiving that you might have developed can be much more present. So for many people, postpartum emotions are not entirely new. They're old attachment wounds reactivated in a new relational context.
Wow.
It's like a lot of the memories once you become pregnant, and once the baby arrives, you start thinking about your early caregivers and your relationship to your mother or father or grandmother. And if you had a bad relationship, then, some of those painful memories might reemerge, and you might try to do all you can to say, hey, I'm not going to parent this way, right? So it really kind of structures how you parent. And some clients say, hey, I've been through a lot and I'm thinking about having a kid, so I do want to take some time to process this. So they come kind of
Like
prepared.
they're aware that
they're aware
that they have some stuff that might need to be addressed.
They're carrying a lot, and they want to work through it beforehand. Because again, like I emphasize all the time, the perinatal period amplifies all those emotions, the pre-existing emotions and relational issues. So.
I mean, that comes through over and over again in what you're saying and in this sort of curriculum. And then on top of, these physiological changes and, sort of like attachment patterns being activated, people are also dealing with social and cultural stressors. Could you talk a little bit about that dimension?
Whew, don't get me started. So, in the U.S., people... It's like our structure, our society does not support parents, period. So, people are dealing with minimal paid leave, nuclear family isolation. In some parts of the world, they have a containment period, places like China, Nigeria, where the birthing parent stays home. They don't leave the house for like the first 30 days. Instead, they're cared for by their community. It could be the in-laws, their siblings, but they provide the food for the mom, and so that the mother, to support the birthing parent's recovery, right? And we don't really have those systems in place. Now, I shout out to the doulas, right? I mean, if you're able to get a postpartum doula, that's great. But this isn't a thing that's built into our societal structure. These are things that, they're expenses. If you don't have the resources, then you might not be able to afford a postpartum doula. And then there's high childcare costs. So all those things can make the postpartum period even more stressful.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's powerful that the curriculum actually addresses that and helps people to think through, or at least understand, what kind of cultural and social pressures they might be feeling. Because again, some of those forces and things people might be feeling are like invisibilized, right? And then you're not aware that these things are at work. So let's talk about module 3. And this is like relationships and role shifts. Why is that a key part of preparing?
Parenthood, it reshapes partnerships and identity roles in significant ways, right? So in my group, we talk about how roles and responsibilities often form silently over time, right? And we also talk about mental load and invisible labor. So there's like a gender cultural component that a lot of those things get amplified, right? Once the baby comes in the picture, if you have a household with 2 parents working full time and then the baby comes and then one partner is taking on more of the domestic work, and that can lead to a lot of resentment in the relationship, and
right. It's like who's going to take the L? And we know a lot of times it's going to be the mom.
Right. And oftentimes, there's a documentary I get my participants to watch called Fair Play, and they talk about this, the mental load. And oftentimes in relationships, there's, one person that is constantly carrying the cognitive load. So they're the manager of like all the things that need to be done in the household or related to childcare. And maybe the partner helps, but even though the partner is helping, it doesn't really help to reduce some of the cognitive load in any real way. And instead, it's more helpful if each partner takes ownership of the different tasks. So that means they kind of take on the task from, the planning stage all the way to the implementation stage. So if somebody says, okay, I'm going to go grocery shopping, it's their job to actually create the grocery list and then do all the things, carry out all the steps. Because if you have one person saying, all right, let me make the list for you, and then you go do this, then, that's still more work that they have to do.
You haven't really lifted that responsibility from their cognitive load.
Yes.
They're still, it's like everybody's doing more work. So it's like if you're gonna move in a lane, you're saying it's better for that parent to just take that whole lane.
That's right.
And then but then have other areas where maybe, you get a break. I mean, that's, again, this is like, you in retrospect, and especially if you live through this, it seems obvious, but it's so powerful to think about it beforehand. I hope this is really giving our listeners a sense of things they should be thinking about, what's in this kind of, group work that you have prepared. Let's just quickly give people a brief sense of what some of the other modules. So the 5th module is about support systems and community. What are you trying to sort of engage with there?
With this one, I like doing this one. We do a little bit of support mapping where we slow things down and the participants think about the different types of supports in their lives. So who are the people they can go to for emotional support, for practical support, like more instrumental? Maybe we need to pay somebody for childcare to babysit or get a nanny. We need to pay somebody to clean the house, right? Like that's things you can outsource, right? And then who can you go to for professional support, whether it's a therapist, doula. So to think about all those things.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it could be that people with, who have a lot of resources are already thinking about I can just, I can sort of pay for these different things. But, there is, I think, this sense to try to draw a boundary around the nuclear family. Mm-hmm. And that time when you're like sort of immediately postpartum or, it's like, I could see where people would do that even stronger. You want to kind of be in your little, cocoon, but that, that might be a time when you might need certain kinds of support, it seems like, and to sort of be able to think through that in a way that's like getting support is not about failure or about one's,
That's
effectiveness.
right. I'm so glad you said that because it's, asking for help can be challenging for a lot of people. And that is the thing, like, I spend a lot of time talking to different clients about ways to receive support. And I try to normalize the fact that, hey, this perinatal period is a period of receiving. That's something that Postpartum Support International emphasize on their website. This is a period for receiving. Even when I know you're very independent, but you can't do this alone. So it does require vulnerability, and that can feel uncomfortable for a lot of people. But when people try to go at it alone, that's when they find themselves, experiencing depression and feeling isolated, feeling overwhelmed. So it's really important to think about ways you can access support. Honestly, I would say the first 12 months, right, postpartum. Not just, that first month or so after the baby is born, but really think through the supports you might need for that whole period.
No, 100%. And I think this is where, I just got to say that myth of the nuclear family has to be shaken up a little bit. I mean, I know that for some people who really are, understand their family as a supportive unit, it can sound, to say myth of the nuclear family could be like, what? What do you mean? No, my family is real, family first. And that's all good. But, I think when you really look at, effective parenting situations, and particularly situations where Black women and Black birthing people's health is effectively supported, it's probably not just a nuclear family. It's probably like at very least extended, family, other kinds of networks. And I would also say in situations where people are trying to draw those boundaries around the nuclear family too strongly, there's probably a Black mother or birthing person who's being overextended. Mm-hmm. So All right, the last module we kind of want to preview is about mental health prevention and early planning. So what does prevention mean here in this context?
Prevention means identifying personal risk factors early and creating a plan for support before people are overwhelmed. I mean, that's as simple as it can get. It means normalizing help seeking and reducing shame around mental health struggles. It also means increasing protective factors ahead of time.
And what are some of the major risk factors you want people to think about?
If you're someone who already struggles with anxiety or depression, or you have a family history of mental health conditions such as depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, or OCD, trauma history, relationship stress, financial strain, limited stress, complications in pregnancy, previous pregnancy loss, complications with lactation or complications during birth, and especially if you're somebody that belongs to a high stress parenting group, and that includes, parents of color, all those things could be a risk factor.
Yeah, no, well, listen, I really appreciate you sharing your insights with us. It's like hearing about all these mental health factors related to Black maternal health. I can't believe this isn't more of the conversation in our culture, to be honest. And so I'm really thankful to you. So for somebody listening right now who's pregnant, postpartum, or for folks considering parenthood, and especially I would say for people supporting those kinds of folks, what do you most want them to take away from this conversation?
I would tell them, hey, sis, you are not failing because this is hard. Parenting is hard. Pregnancy is hard. And a lot of what people experience in this transition is normal, right? So you're not going crazy. A lot of this is normal, even if it feels disorienting or intense. And, if you can really take the time to plan, because preparation and support, early planning can really reduce unnecessary suffering.
So even if someone's already pregnant, but there's still future stages they can plan for.
That's right. Yeah, so take the time to have the conversations with your family, your partner, your community, and talk about and think through what kinds of supports you might need, and think about the things you need to take care of yourself, because you don't have to go through this alone.
And during Black Maternal Health Week specifically, what do you want people to understand about what real support for Black mothers and birthing people should look like?
Well, real support means caring about Black maternal health beyond awareness, language alone. It means recognizing that structural racism affects physical health, mental health, stress load, support access, and birth outcomes. And it means creating emotional, relational, practical, and community-based conditions where Black mothers and birthing people can actually be held and supported.
Listen, hearing you talk, I'm like, man, we already have a child, but I'm like, can I take this course? You know what I mean? Grounded beginnings. I'm trying.
It's not too late.
I feel like, oh man, I want more of this. So for people who want to, we're going to put all kinds of resources about Black maternal health in our show notes and in the Patreon. But for people who want to contact you directly, or maybe sign up for one of your curriculums, where can they go?
They can go to my website, which is SaadiqaKumanyikatherapy.com. And on that website, they'll find, a tab with all the different groups that I'm offering and links to sign up.
And they also can contact you directly through that website.
Exactly.
Right. Because folks, maybe, you're in this situation, or I got to say, probably if you're listening to this right now, somebody who needs this kind of support that is in this. So I think having heard this, I'm now got to be more accountable, I think, even in this phase of our parenthood. So, you know what I'm saying? I know the listeners are going to help me hold me accountable. You know what I'm saying?
All right now. Well, thank you.
We may have to go to making this show only once a month, y'all. That's
That's right. Y'all hear that? No, stop.
That's what I'm learning. All right, y'all. Anyway, Saadiqa Kumanyika, yes, psychotherapist, ecotherapist, and definitely a strong advocate in the space of Black maternal health.
Thank you.
All right, y'all, that was my conversation with my wife, Saadiqa. Isn't she amazing? Yeah, can you believe? I can't believe it, man. I get to be married to this person, man. Oh my God. Yeah. But anyway, I definitely wanted to start there because I think when people talk about, Black maternal health, the conversation can just get narrowed into like the physical aspects of birth. And she really, I think, helps us to think more broadly. And, it's also good for us, honestly, as a couple, just to reflect on, our own experience. But for us, that experience was a while back. Our daughter is 6. It's getting kind of scary, y'all. Look at how tall Yola is, man. Oh, man. She's like, I don't know if any of y'all listen to Empire City, but she was 4 when that was made. Now she's 6. And it's like, I don't know. She's getting older. This episode of Unruly Subjects is brought to you by Haymarket Books, which has loads of great left-wing titles, perfect for listeners like you. And one that I know you're going to feel is The Extended Universe, How Disney Killed the Movies and Took Over the World by Vicky Osterweil. A provocative history of Disney's rise to cultural dominance, The Extended Universe pulls skeletons from the corporate closet to decode the political messages hidden in all your favorite childhood movies. In The Extended Universe, Vicky Osterweil takes us on a quest to discover how Disney's Imagineers have made it impossible to reflect on the wonders of growing up without thinking of Disney's movies, amusement parks, and merchandising. Drawing on extensive interviews with filmmakers, screenwriters, union organizers, and Disney adults alike, Osterweil unearths reactionary political commitments and maleficent legal maneuvers so cartoonishly evil they would make one of Walt's own animated villains blush. As Natasha Leonard puts it, Osterweil is the brilliant, generous, and revolutionary guide we need to rethink cultural production today and kill the mouse inside our heads. Find The Extended Universe at haymarketbooks.org, where all hardcover books are 10% off every day. So for the next part of this episode, I wanted to talk to someone who's kind of really in the trenches in a different way. So you're about to hear from Malajah Rigsby. She's a new mother who just recently, had her child, and from her doula, Shantice Edwards. And so they came together for this interview, and they're going to talk about their journey together. And this conversation really gives us a chance to think about what support looks like in those really crucial moments, what care feels like, and what, it means for somebody to have an advocate and a guide and a really sturdy presence during, all those vulnerable periods, right? And what I want y'all to pay attention to is how much this conversation resonates with the themes and the ideas that I talked about with my wife, Saadiqa. We don't know. I mean, like my wife has never met them. And, I honestly didn't know them, before I interviewed them. And yet just them talking about their experiences, I think you're going to see some real connection points between the aspects of Black maternal health that I talked about with Saadiqa. So I think you're really going to enjoy it and learn. Here's my conversation with Malajah and Shantice. Unruly Subjects. What's going on, y'all? Yes. All right. Yo, listen. I'm honored to be joined today by 2 incredible folks. We got, first of all, we have a mother who has been through the journey. Malajah Rigsby is with us. You know what I'm saying? Malajah Rigsby is a new mother of an incredible human being I'm looking at right now, named Leilani, who's 2 months old. Malajah also works as a caregiver, and she recently graduated with her medical school certification as a nurse's assistant. Is that powerful, y'all? Come on. That's real. But Malajah didn't do it alone. She also had support from Shantice Edwards, a really powerful individual. She's a Black Southern raised full spectrum doula. And she's also a Reiki and sound healer and creative who's dedicated to reimagining and supporting care for Black birthing people and families. She's an Abarisha, so she can bring those Orisha traditions in for those who know about that, you know what I'm saying? She's originally from Georgia, but she's now based in the Bay Area, and she brings the warmth of her Southern upbringing and the artistry of her healing practices to every birth space she enters. And she works with a SisterWeb doula network, so we're going to hear all about that and other resources that we want to plug y'all into. So we want to talk today about birthing and motherhood and really, just Black maternal care and support. So Malajah, you went through this whole process 2 months ago. Where are you at right now in it? How does it feel? Like, you're sitting there, I saw you holding Leilani. Yeah, you know
honestly,
what I mean?
For me personally, I am just now, like, I'm a mother. I was a lady with a baby. I was a lady with a baby that was mine. Like 3 months postpartum, I was in, I want to say I was going through postpartum depression. Because I'm aware of what postpartum depression can consist of, I tried to make sure that I wasn't in the quote unquote deep end, but me making sure I wasn't in the deep end was still not making sure that I wasn't in postpartum. So I was actively going through it, but not really acknowledging that I was going through postpartum because in my head, it wasn't that bad, right? So technically me going through postpartum, I was kind of just surviving. Like I was making sure the baby was alive. I was getting enough sleep to be alive. I was eating enough to be alive because necessarily I wasn't thinking about myself for real. My whole concern was the one thing that I was keeping safe inside of me is outside of me. So I have to keep it safe. And so for me, I was not relaxed. I'm not going to lie to you. It was a wonderful experience. Don't get me wrong, but I am so way more happy that that she's way more bigger and I want to say a little bit more sturdier. It just gives me a little bit more confidence as a mother. I'm still new.
I relate to this. I have a 6-year-old daughter, and I remember those first days where it just felt like you're just trying to keep the child alive. We didn't know how to do anything. My wife and I, I'm learning how to do the diaper, and we're trying to get the baby. There's the whole piece about getting the baby to latch. You know what I mean? And latch, and the breastfeeding is a whole thing. And the hospital is coming in. We were in the hospital, so they waking you up at 2 a.m. They coming in, doctors coming in, and it's like and then you get home. And it's like, oh man, now it's on us. And
my goodness. I still don't relax, but I'm just more confident. I'm way more confident. I've always learned I've always been a carer. Even in my profession, I take care of people. I learned how to care. I love to care. That's what I do. I'm good at that. I just have to trust that I can do this. I don't know. It's more personal. I'm going to just say that. It's way more personal. It's different from caring from somebody else for, just for job purposes or whatever. But she is my responsibility.
I understand.
And I love her so much. I don't think I've ever loved anyone so much in my entire life. She's helped me grow so much and just trust life. She is a whole baby. And she really just be trusting me. Look. She ain't even crying.
She knows. Yeah, no, she understands.
She's so cool because I ain't never been a mom before, and she just think I got this. So that is the biggest confidence booster that I could just ever have. Look at this. Look.
Seeing how confident Malajah felt 2 months in, it really hit home. You know what I mean? Because it was clear that she really struggled to get to that place. And so I asked her about her experience of the challenges that she faced as a Black mother having her first child, and what that teaches us about Black maternal health.
I think some of the challenges are just feeling safe in the healthcare system, just feeling heard for one, and kind of in control. So one thing that I learned, especially just being with Shantice, is what people say is not law. So, there's certain things that you may not know, like you may not need a certain procedure, or you may not have to do something. Sometimes it's just done because it's easier, or it's the easiest process, or it's simpler to get stuff done. But you have that right to, or that space, and that right to say, hey, I want you to slow down. I want this to happen like this. You can control the flow of the room. And that was really important for me, at least as a new mother navigating motherhood, especially giving birth, and not knowing what to expect. You want that calm and, that, I don't know. It was a serene vibe for me. My pregnancy was amazing, and my birth was amazing. And I have to say that was mostly because of me having a doula and a wonderful support health team.
That makes sense. Actually, what you're saying, like, that if you don't, I hear you saying that some people don't feel empowered and don't feel like they can kind of, have the process unfold at their pace, get the questions answered that they needed, And Shantice, what else do we need to know?
Yeah, I think Malajah hit it on the head with sovereignty of one's body. And I think when you're a Black birthing person experiencing giving birth, it doesn't just trigger the medical experiences that one may have had in the past, but it also can trigger a lot of the experiences of, do I have the right to have autonomy and sovereignty over my body and my experience, which goes generations and generations and generations back to ownership of yourself and your own experiences. I feel that oftentimes when I work with Black birthing folks, a big difference that I see is just the fact that they're illuminated by the fact of, wow, I actually have a choice. I can say no to this. I have autonomy. I can say no, thank you to something that's a protocol. And I think a lot of times in the cultural, understanding that we have with the medical space, as much as we respect doctors and what they do and nurses as well, there's almost like an authoritative energy that they can have in the room, whether it's intentional or not. We've almost been trained from childhood to mind our elders and listen to our doctors, which is important in some aspects. But I'm really big on listening to your inner intuition, especially as a Black birthing person. There's just so much ancestral wisdom we carry in our bodies that might predate our age that we currently are or our life. And a lot of times we sometimes have to lessen that in order to feel like we have to be in spaces, whether even if it's in a professional space. And I would even say that sovereignty doesn't just have, some tension within the medical landscape. Sometimes it's family dynamics. You might have an auntie in the room that's, you need to get a C-section because that's what I did. And I'm just tired of this baby, making you my baby in pain.
Wow.
Or
I didn't even think about that part, right? It's like you have on one hand the authority of the medical system, right, where people are just taught to obey, and sometimes the doctors really, they're intimidating, right? But you're saying also it could be family, like other people around you who mean well, but now they're not letting you have that experience. Both Malajah and Shantice said that one of the most important moments for mothers is when they decide whether they're actually going to go through with birth when they find out that they're pregnant. They talked about the challenge of supporting mental health no matter what the outcome is. And of course, due to the multiple systems affecting them, Black mothers face some unique pressures. So I asked Malajah to explain what this was like for her.
So long story short for that little period is the lady came out and she got this big goofy smile on her face. So I already knew. And so then she kind of tries to I don't know, poker face and ask me so what do you want to do? And I'm like, girl, what do you mean what I'm going to do? There's no what we're going to do. We having baby. So that was that. And so now I'm just walking around
we doing it. All right.
So I'm like, okay, I didn't know what to do. So I didn't know what to say. And I never wanted to keep my baby a secret, but I also didn't want too much input from people. As soon as you tell people you're pregnant, you get to hear so much stuff.
Let me just stop right there. Shantice, Malajah saying she went to the clinic and she was presented with this option, of, do you want to move forward with this or do something else? Is that something, could you say anything about, mothers in that situation and Black mothers, that particular part of the journey that we might need to know?
Absolutely. It's why I emphasize that I'm a full spectrum doula because going back to bodily autonomy and sovereignty, in Malajah's story, she wanted to proceed with having her baby, and we love that. But there are oftentimes mothers who have, who feel differently. I'm actually from Georgia, so this is something that is very relevant to the community that I'm a part of, both politically. And I have to honestly, step up and say that it's a part of what made me both be resistant and was eventually my threshold into this work, because 10 years ago, I also had a decision to make about whether or not I wanted to proceed with motherhood. And I chose not to. And the lack of care that I went through, both in my community and in the medical space, put me in a really, really, really dark place, a place I never thought I would be traversing. And through that experience, I realized that I had a lot of passion for this journey. And it took me a really, really long time to work through it, but through many, many, many different sacred portals that we don't have time to go into today. The mirror was held back at me that this was a part of the what I went through was the medicine for me to be able to go and do this work for other people from a place of like inner standing. And so I'm very passionate about full spectrum doula support. And it is something that is very real. We're all grown, we're all doing these things, and we all have decisions to make. And so doula support is something that is not just for people who give birth, but it's for folks who decide to terminate pregnancies, and it's also for folks who have and experience miscarriages.
Wow.
And I'm one of them. I'm one of those people who made that choice. And I wish that me 10 years ago had somebody like a doula to hold me and walk with me. I probably would have suffered a lot less. And I'm grateful to be here. But there were lots of moments where I didn't want to be because I didn't feel like the care that I was given, it didn't make me feel like I mattered. It didn't make me feel like I should be here.
Wow. That's really powerful. I mean, there's so much value, in what you're saying. And I bet there's a lot of people out there that didn't understand that a doula can help you through even if you are going to terminate your pregnancy. That's really important. That all these different stages. By the way, if you heard a little patting there, that was Malajah just kind of patting the back of Leilani real quick. I'm trying to get it maybe to burping Leilani. There was so much in my talk with Malajah and Shantice that really connected to what I learned from my wife Saadiqa in terms of postpartum depression, and actually what we lived through as a couple. And one moment that really hit me was when Malajah talked about her experience with breastfeeding.
First time mother, I always seen mothers breastfeeding. That just seems like a motherly thing. But for me, that was difficult. It was stressful. It was overwhelming. And I was experiencing postpartum. And in my head, right? Oh, you're not breastfeeding. You're a horrible mom. But here's my doula. You did your best. And that right there makes you a great mother. You need that. Like right now I want to cry because I needed her for that. And some people don't know they need people for that.
Yeah. If I could add on to this.
Please.
I think one of the things that I've noticed with working with mostly Black clients, but also just, birthing people who oftentimes identify as women, is we got to learn to take that cape off. We oftentimes are just so used to having to mask and to perform because we don't really get the grace of not knowing everything. And one of the main things we've worked on consistently, and we still work on till this day, is radical self-acceptance of exactly where you're at and knowing that it's okay not to just ask for help, but then to receive it. And then taking it a step further is when you finally do connect with people who truly see you, allow them to see you. Allow them to tell you, hey, sister, hey, brother, hey, friend, hey, cousin, I'm noticing these things. I know sometimes it can be really hard and we can get defensive or protective of things because we want so badly to be seen in like all of our light. And you are seen in your light, but you also need help, and that's okay. And I think a lot of times clients that I work with, we have to go through the psychological process of that every single day of like trusting the process. That was our thing. Trust the process, and know that when people are seeing you fully in all of who you are, that you're safe and that it's okay to lean in for that help.
Toward the end of our conversation, I asked Shantice if there's anything else she wanted to share about her work and other ways that people could support Black maternal health.
Yeah, I'd love to share some things that are going on. So in celebration for Black Maternal Health Week, SisterWeb is going to be hosting a birth justice prom April 17th. I think ticket sales are pretty high right now, so they're pretty limited, but we are receiving and accepting donations, one for the event, but also year round. We're doing that in partnership with Birthland, which is a a midwife collective that supports home births out in the East Bay, out in Oakland. There is Black Women's Birthing Justice, which you can go to bwbj.com, as well as Grounded Birth Beginnings. California Black Women's Health Project is also an amazing organization. And so I would say lead with curiosity, continue to find resources and organizations that are doing this work. First and foremost, I always represent SisterWeb. If you go to www.sisterweb.org, we're always receiving referrals as well as donations so we can continue doing this work, because we are a nonprofit organization and we get funding through grants, but we also stay afloat through really generous donors such as possibly yourself.
I got 5 on it. You know what I mean? But yeah, no, listen, that's powerful work. And we don't want to keep it theoretical. Like I said, this is things you can do right, immediately. Like you hearing this, you can immediately go and support those things right now to support Black maternal health. Malajah, is there anything that you want to say to people in terms of what message do you want to put out to people about the importance of Black maternal health? I mean, you're also a healthcare worker, getting ready to, move further into your nursing assistant career. What do you want to share with us?
Well, as far as having a doula, I feel like it's very important, especially as a Black woman, to be heard, to be listened to be held, to be validated. All of those things are important when you are getting ready to bring another life into the world, especially also someone to help you command that space, like I said, in that birth room when you're about to, bring that life into, like I said, the world again. It's extremely necessary. It's just as necessary as a hug when you're down. Like, it's necessary.
All right, y'all. That was my conversation with Malajah and Shantice. Powerful, right? Yeah. I mean, I wanted to include that conversation because I think that together, both of these interviews really make it clear that Black maternal health is not just a medical issue, right? It's not just about like one appointment or anything, right? One birthing situation. It's really about the conditions that we're expected to survive. And and it's also about power, right? And policy. And so before we close, there's one more piece of work I want to mention. The Black Mamas Matter Alliance has put together a Black Maternal Health Week resolution guide to help people introduce and advance resolutions at the state and local level. Now, as a lot of y'all know, a resolution is not the same thing as a law, and the guide's very clear about that. It's a formal public statement of values and priorities by a legislative body. But that still matters, I think, right? It can help shape agendas, it can raise visibility, support community efforts, and push elected officials to publicly recognize the urgency of Black maternal health inequities and the need for real structural change. It includes a framework for how organizers and advocates can work with elected officials, build coalitions, draft language, and advocate for these resolutions in your own cities and states. And so I encourage people to spend more time with the work of the Black Mamas Matter Alliance and learn more about the birth workers, organizers, and advocates and mothers doing this work, and think seriously about what support looks like, not only in a personal sense for each of us, but in a civic and political sense too. Because if we're serious about care, then we have to be serious about changing the conditions that make care so hard to access in the first place. All right, y'all. That's it for this week. Unruly Subjects is supported by listeners just like you. Join us at unrulysubjectspodcast.com. Unruly Subjects is produced in partnership with Rohome Productions. Boy, I'm proud of Rohome. Yeah, man. Alex Lewis is Rohome's creative director. John Myers is Rohome's executive producer. Shout out to my wife and my guest, Saadiqa Kumanyika. Yes. And my daughter, Yola. Thanks for helping us start off the show, Yola. Also, shout out to my assistant, Carissa. And thanks to my other guests this week, Shantice Edwards and Malajah Rigsby. Malajah gonna get mad at me if I don't give her those horns. Yo, I gotta give a big shout out to my friend Rebecca Griffin. She's the person who introduced me to Malajah and Shantice, and she suggested that I talk to them for Black Maternal Health Week. So thanks, Rebecca. Our theme music was composed by Axel Kakutier. Alex Tatusian made our tile art. Make sure you subscribe to Unruly Subjects wherever you get your podcasts. If you're enjoying Unruly Subjects, leave us a review. Tell everybody you know about the show if you liked it. Say, man, y'all gotta listen to that Unruly Subjects. You can follow the show on Instagram at Unruly Subjects Pod, and my personal Instagram is at Shinjirai, and we will see you next week with another banger. Rohome Productions. Unruly Subjects is supported by listeners just like you. Join us at patreon.com/unrulysubjects.